have the ability in this class to either attend through streaming or in person. The information about where to get the stream is here on the home page. Most weeks there is a discussion. So we had the discussion in class, and on Tuesdays I'll try to hold the discussion in class. There's extra credit for doing it in class. Officially, we're all required to do the discussion online. So there's a discussion each week. And there's a couple of my tests up there, but Christopher has made an excellent post there. So please join Christopher by Sunday. If you didn't do this in class on Tuesday, then you have the opportunity to do it, up until Sunday tonight to get that discussion done. Okay. So any questions about that? Yeah,
so
Jacob.
When we go to write that, how do we actually write in?
Cool. Yeah. So that was actually my silly little tests here. So when you come in here, you see the prompt, and right at the bottom of it, it says reply. So hit reply, and then you can type in your answer there. Okay. If you're going to type a long answer, I recommended like 150 words. And I also said like 100 really good words is worth 150 words in my book any day. So look at 100 to 150 words that are, obviously we want to be on topic. And
Sorry, mine went long.
Pardon me?
Mine's a little bit long.
That's absolutely fine. I have no problem with things going longer, for sure. Yeah. The whole idea is to get you thinking about, you're thinking about it already, to get you, verbalizing it. So Jacob, you type in there. If you have a long post, write it in a word processor and then paste it in. Never know when Canvas might disconnect and you'll lose, your last 20 minutes of thinking and writing. So write it locally on your computer and then paste it in. There's a bunch of different functions in this. They call it the rich media editor up here. So if you want to learn more about those, I think typing is pretty obvious here. But if you want to learn more about using the other functions, like for instance being able to link to something outside, you can link to a YouTube video. I think it's with the public resources page. You can embed a picture if you wanted to put a picture in. You can even upload some video to Canvas a little bit. Not recommend it. Anyhow, bold, italic, all those things. A lot of them look like a word processor. A few extras maybe in the multimedia department. If you want to know more about it, click on the little question mark, and there are tutorials that you can get through there to find out more about that. You're certainly not required to put anything multimedia in there, but it's fun. So yeah, that's how you write and reply there. And do read over what other people are saying too, because it's and reply to them if you like. It's good because you get 5 points for your post and 5 points for a reply. Now, of course, if there isn't anybody to reply to when you get in, what can I do? I'm going to give you 10 points, for that. But okay. So questions about that? Okay. The other great thing about these discussions is that they are based on the topics for your term papers. So the idea is to get the reflection going in the discussion, and maybe if a few people join the discussion, then there's a bank of ideas and things up there to stimulate you, to give you stuff to write about in your term paper. So there are 4 assigned topics, possible topics for the term paper, and 4 discussions that help us start thinking about it. Lord. To get chairs, people laughing out there. I don't know what it's all about. Okay, so thanks for the question, Jacob. Anybody else with a question on the discussions? All right, fantastic. So if you didn't turn a paper to me on Tuesday, then you want to get it in online and get going on that. All right, cool. Every week there's an overview, tells us a little bit what we're focusing on. This week's topic, chapter 1 of the textbook. Of course, the textbook is full of ideas and information and stuff. But overall, I would say that what's going on there is they, chart the big change that happened in electronic media from old school mass media like radio and television to what we currently have now, which is old school radio and television, but also enhanced and transformed by digital media with its ability to, let us join into the electronic communication in a way that we never could before. It was tough to get on television, tough to get on radio, but it's easy to get on YouTube and share a video. The interactivity of it, it was tough to interact before. It was tough to give feedback, for instance. You could write a letter to your television station and complain about something. But now, with the overall media environment, one can feedback constantly, not just through ratings, but also through, other platforms, basically, in which you can discuss the broadcast while it's happening, if you want, or those platforms, again, like YouTube, build in feedback into the platform itself as an important part of using it. So those are huge transformations. We looked at a number of different models of communication that could help just kind of broadly map things out for us. So we had Shannon and Weaver's mathematical model, which, remember, we had a sender, sends a message to a receiver. There's the message. It's traveling down a channel, right? And we talked about feedback, where the receiver actually can feedback something to the sender, either through their behavior or through other forms of communication. We have a little picture of old school mass media, which is sort of one central source of information, like, let's say, a network or something like that, and many receivers spread out all over the place. That's what they mean by mass, right? So one message going out simultaneously to a whole bunch of people. So that might be just a picture of mass media. And this is a picture of what they call the mathematical model, created by Shannon and Weaver, 2 engineers at Bell Labs. Yep, Jacob.
So are like the senders and receivers like satellites?
It could be however you want to model it. In my, I think about human communications, so sender would be me saying something to the class, and you would all be receivers. For Shannon and Weaver, the sender would have been, a centralized source of information, and it would be going down a phone line or a satellite. So they were into technical communication, but this applies to all of it as a picture. Yeah. Good. Okay. I'm just rapidly reviewing some stuff that we went through last time. Learn the meaning of key concepts such as convergence, consolidation, and competition. So, these are sort of key concepts for talking about how the electronic media functions as a business, right? So we talked about convergence as being the way that different media that we have thought about as, isolated, separate, converge together. Things that were once separate now can all be consumed together, and the device that does this for us currently is the smartphone, right? Where you can watch a video, you can listen to something like radio, you can, do a whole bunch of other things, but it's all converging in your phone in a sense. And then consolidation, competition, 2 kind of concepts that are good for talking about business. So that's one of the things as we go along. We got different weeks on different topics and stuff, but we always want to keep our eye on, what the news is about the latest going on in the media industries and stuff. And so yesterday, I just kind of monitor this stuff and want to bring it up, but here's an interesting case where Comcast is trying to compete with Netflix and hang on to its previously privileged position. And so we want to pay attention to what kinds of developments are going on in the business, basically. Comcast is offering a streaming service now to rival Netflix. It will be free to Comcast subscribers, people who already pay for cable TV. They're thinking of charging about $12 as a monthly subscription fee. Think of it like Netflix, except Comcast a few years back. So this would be a great example of competition, right? Everyone's trying to beat Netflix right now in the streaming service. Disney is going to try to beat Netflix. Comcast is trying to beat Netflix. Netflix has had free reign without much competition for quite a while, but now it's going to heat up as Disney is going to pull all of those Lucasfilms out. My son was overjoyed to see Han Solo was on Netflix all of a sudden. It's not for much longer, dude. That's not going to happen. Disney's going to pull it out. So everyone's going to be competing with Netflix. But just to go back a couple of years, there was a great moment of consolidation. Comcast bought NBC Universal. NBC, we know, was an old network, right? Universal Studios, an old movie production and distribution company. So what do they have? They have a back catalog, a library of Friends, of all kinds of NBC originated shows. All those Universal movies, like released movies, like the Spielberg, like E.T., those kinds of movies and stuff. So that's very valuable stuff, right? Disney's got a drawer full of Disney stuff, right? And so Comcast paid billions of dollars for NBC Universal 2-3 years ago. We could look it up. But the main point is that's the consolidation part. That's companies like Comcast, which is a huge cable company, saying, whoa, man, we're getting hammered in the content department by Netflix. We need to buy quickly a huge library of stuff that we can use to compete with Netflix. And as they do that, watch as that stuff gets pulled down from Netflix. Right? Friends does really, really well on Netflix. And they left it, they put it up against, like we're talking $1 million per episode is the licensing fee for a show like that, or Seinfeld or something. And they're gonna pull it eventually, but they left it up for another year, which already was remarkable. Fenris?
Acquisition 10 years ago, 7.24 billion.
Acquisition of what?
Comcast to Universal 10 years ago.
$7.2 billion. Billion dollars. Wow, 10 years ago as well.
Yep.
Thank you for that. The facts. I love it. Yeah. So consolidation, the idea that smaller companies join together, they buy each other up to become big enough to compete at a larger scale. And if you don't do that, you get left behind. And now with Netflix, the competition is global. Previously, you just had to worry about how you're doing in the United States, but now you're worrying about it all over the world. So that's just an example of consolidation and competition going on. They kind of work together. So we're going to keep an eye on these developments, and in April we're going to have a session where we all report on what we found to be the latest, most interesting news coming out of the industry. So again, like literally a 1-minute kind of news report. I'll ask everyone to come up. We'll figure out who wants to talk about Google, who wants to talk about Disney, who wants to talk about Apple, that kind of stuff. So, any questions about convergence, consolidation, competition? There's terms that we're going to use, going forward. But, for the moment, I think an important one is, convergence. The idea that all these media come together in, a single device. Right? So, what would you think is the most important thing that led to the possibility that, let's say, radio and television could all come together in a single device? Digitization, yeah. Thanks, Rick. Yeah. I think in the textbook, they call it like the biggest transformation in communication technology since the printing press, right? Going way back to, the beginning of this, where Gutenberg printed Bibles, and you had these Bibles starting to circulate. But yeah, digitization. Jacob?
Do you think that CDs and stuff are going to be like a pass in the history? Like they're going to come out with something else that we're going to
I don't know what other people think, but the general trend is, yeah, physical media are being displaced by streaming, in part because giving someone some physical media means they can resell it. You don't like that, right? You don't want to have a secondhand DVD market going on. You want to, make people pay constantly for the stream. Yeah. It's a good question. So yeah, digitization in the sense that anything audio, anything video can all be reduced to, bits and streamed. And that has many repercussions. I did a research project in the mid-90s when I was in graduate school about digital radio. And they were all really excited. And it was like an eye-opener to me because they were really excited about being able to beam digital coupons into people's cars so that they could, driving along, you're near a Wendy's, beam you a coupon with $1 off or something like that. They were talking about, radio companies were talking about streaming kids' video programming into the car because they saw an opening opportunity that people would want to keep their kids busy in the back with that kind of thing. So as me, it was like, wow, this is like a radio company. They're talking about streaming video. But then I realized once you have that digital pipe, to somebody's device, you can send anything, text, video, audio, whatever. So that, really has been the huge transformation. If you look at this timeline, which I better shrink down a touch, it's kind of small. But, you see the original mass media, books and newspapers. I guess technically the book was probably the very first one. There's, very little happening between 1600 and the mid-1800s, right? And then you get, telegraph and the telephone and stuff coming in. Hit to the 1900 and we get to electronic mass media like radio, like television. Cable begins in the 50s as people need better. And then, what happens over here? So all of a sudden, there's hardly enough room, right? Yeah, and that's because digitization starts to happen around here, right? And we'll look into cell phone technologies up at CD, DVD, HDTV, all the rest of it. So you can see the innovation just basically explodes as soon as you get to digitization. Digitization, perhaps the most important thing that's happened to electronic communication, since it began. So it's an interesting timeline. Christopher?
Would Wi-Fi be considered digitization, or would it be kind of a separate, also kind of revolutionary thing that coincided at the same time and made?
It's a great point.
Possible?
It's a great point. I think in the kind of generalizations we're making, it would all be part of digitization. But absolutely. Even cell phones were analog in their very early days, but it was incredibly inefficient compared to what we have now. And also, data transmission was not happening, right? And you needed a modem that would transform it into.
I remember.
That kind of stuff. So it is definitely a part of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, sure, absolutely. Wireless. Wireless is it allows communication to compete with all the mobile technologies that we had before, radio to begin with. Okay, wow. So, that is sort of the story of the broad historical transition from mass media to, again, what we have now, where it's tempting to say the mass media are dead. They're certainly nowhere near as, powerful or important as they used to be. But we now exist in this very complex media environment, which is mass media alongside personal media. And by personal media, people are talking about that, referring to a number of different things, but it's largely online digital media personal because you get to choose and select exactly what you want when you want. So, and that leads to kind of a contrast in the audience, whereas 20, 25 years ago, everyone would be aware of the same shows, would be watching things on television. Nowadays, you talk to anybody and they've got very, very diversified, media habits and stuff. So one of the things we like to discuss in this class is sort of what your perception is of that change. Like, I'm old enough, obviously, when I grew up, television was the main form of electronic communication, and FaceTime was like science fiction. It was like, I don't even know what's that all about. You guys, you probably, depending on your age, but you certainly were born before the iPhone came to market. So what do you think of that transition? What do you remember an era when you didn't have sort of anytime, any place access to media? And how do you feel now about the convenience you have about your ability to get whatever you want? Jacob?
Well, when I first got my first cell phone, it was a flip phone from Sprint, and you couldn't go on the internet or anything. You had to watch TV or listen to the radio. And now I have an iPhone, so now it's like you can do everything on an iPhone. Like, it's basically like a computer in your hand.
Yeah, absolutely. It can do so much. Yeah. Julian?
I remember Blackberries like right before. Like I remember my mom had a Blackberry. Me and my sister would always be trying to play like I forget what the game was, but like a little bubble game where you where you would try to get like bubbles in a row and you would pop them all.
Okay.
And like even just being able to access your email on your phone, I remember that was big. So and then it was like right after the iPhone blew up, and then it was like, oh, there's all these applications that you can use that can do different things. So it's like even
the App
though
Store.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And even though that's still like the internet in the palm of your hand, it's like right before the explosion of like it being everywhere. Because not everybody had a BlackBerry. Most people had flip phones.
Right, yeah.
A lot of landlines then too. Less landlines now.
True, yeah. Landlines were part of the cord cutting phenomenon, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a mixed bag. Like, to both their point, it's revolutionary and it's great to like have the access in your phone, but also, I mean, we're definitely seeing people are walking across the street like constantly on their phones. It's certainly addictive, right?
Yeah, well, how does everyone feel about that? Yeah,
I like and dislike it. I like
Yeah.
the technology, but I do find myself like using it way too much when I'm not really doing anything of importance on it. You know what I mean?
Did you want to say something?
Yeah, that's his point. Like, I remember, like, when you used to, like, try to go on the internet, like, I would, like, press it on accident, and then it was, like, I would have to go back because it was going to charge, like, a lot of money to my mom's account.
Oh, okay.
And basically, like, now, it's, like, it's way more accessible, and, like, it's, like, basically, like, cheaper and, like, free. Basically, it's, like, free, like, everything's unlimited now. So then it, like, makes us go on it more because we're not going to
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. So the cost for streaming has come down enough so that it feels almost free. Yeah, absolutely. So that makes it more convenient. But how about the notion of addiction? Did you want to say
I
something?
was going to, on that note, there's actually a like diagnosed kind of like disorder now called nomophobia, where people can physically not go like an hour without checking their phones, without like getting anxious or like tweaking because they don't have their phone next to them.
What's the name of it?
Nomophobia.
Nomophobia, like that?
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Rick?
Or how about like in Japan, they have this thing now where people don't leave their houses at all because everything could be done online.
Yeah.
And it's a thing that's happening to like, a lot
I
of
did.
people.
Yeah, I read a little bit about it.
So because of everything's digital now, they don't have to leave their house. They work from home. They do everything, and they don't socialize with anyone at all.
So it's
that's a
like
negative impact.
people turning more inside. Yeah. Well, it might.
I'm not sure what
be.
it's
It might
called,
not.
but yeah.
Yeah. No doubt. There's a name. Hang on, CJ. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like an annoying thing, like having an iPhone. Like they just add random features that make you like more dependent onto your phone. Like they have the app to tell you how to tell you when to breathe or like when to drink water. Like, oh, you should drink water right now. Like It sends you notifications, so like it definitely makes people dependent like on their phone for stuff. Like
Get up and
especially
walk
people like that are dependent on like health apps. Like, I mean, I don't know. It's just like, yeah, it just makes them more addicted to their phone.
Yeah.
They're spending more time a day like on the app, and that app time builds up over time. So like you think about you're spending like 10 minutes per app, like that adds up to hours. Like
Yeah, and I think
when you could
that
be doing something else.
the new Apple OS, it makes it easier to track how much time you're spending on each app, and it's like,
Yeah.
oh my god. Yeah, absolutely. I used to be kind of like iffy about the addiction part of it, but I see my kids now, and you know, as a parent, I guess you get more anxious about all this stuff than you do about yourself. You know, it's like just, you know, it's like people would never put the phone down at all. So maybe it is, and certainly there's, you know, I have heard of sort of counselors and programs to help people wean themselves off of, like, you know, technology use when it, you know, it impacts their lives, like when they can't even, you know, be productive or something because of it. Yeah, so there are sort of 12-step programs or the equivalent for technology, which is pretty wild. Jacob?
And technology is becoming so advanced now. Like my sister, before she had her son, said that she would never let him use like an iPhone or an iPad. And now just to get your kids to relax, the parents give them the tablet or something.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
turning them into like.
It's very tempting. It's very tempting. And as CJ says, there's, you know, apps rolling out, you know, your kid, oh no, but I got a reading app and the school makes, you know, the textbook's not available. I have to use, you know, my Chromebook or something. And then all of a sudden it's constantly, everything's on a screen. And then, you know, they're flipping between one page in a browser and another one. So it's like literally like a total division of attention. Do you guys think that that's going to impact the way we think?
I was just-
Rick, what do
I
you
was just
want
gonna say something like that. Like, I'm gonna play devil's advocate right now because when TV came out, it was this you know, stupid box, and everyone's gonna be dumb.
Yeah, the idiot box.
But overall, we've all gotten, our IQs are higher than back then. Like, we've all gotten smarter. We're
Is
more,
that right?
We're more
I didn't know that.
informed.
Yeah,
like,
yeah, we're more informed for sure.
1 or 2 points, but like,
Yeah.
we're more informed. We're more aware of what's going on. So, I mean, maybe it's just a change that's happening, and we're the old people that's not understanding what's gonna happen, so we're scared. It's
That's
just
me.
happened every
That's me,
time.
for sure.
It's just happened every time a new medium comes out.
Interesting point. Yeah, my dad used to call the TV the Mind Destroyer. Oh, you guys are watching the Mind Destroyer again. Yeah, I watched like 6 hours a day of TV. It's like a staggering amount. Yeah, and it was viewed as like a social ill. And so there was. You're right. There's a similar ambivalence around all the new communication technology. I think just the personalized aspect, the interactivity of the phone or the tablet, makes it, you know, even more transformative and potentially, you know, what would I say, seductive or something? I don't know exactly, but it's just like, given that the TV sometimes it was boring, you know, it was just like there was like nothing on Sunday morning except religious shows that I wouldn't watch. Okay, so at least there was like nothing to do. You'd go outside, right? But now it's all on demand. It's all tailored to what you want. There, you know, your searches are tracked. You know, the recommendations are customized to what you want, and so, you know, it's just like, wow, you could constantly just be engaged with the phone. Yeah, it's an interesting point. But how about old media in all of this? What is your feelings about old television and radio? Does it still have a place in your life? I mean, we talked about radio when you get in the car sometimes. How about TV?
Yeah, I still have a working Viacom 2 system and Laserdisc.
Oh, okay. Like Laserdisc, like those big ones, those 12 inchers?
Yep.
Wow, amazing. Those were pretty cool.
Viacom 2 is more like 8-track.
Okay.
So,
Is that because you like sort of older tech?
yeah,
that's
I like
pretty
messing with older tech and fixing the circuitry that goes along with it.
Interesting. Okay, so it has a niche, definitely. Julian?
Yeah, I have like a stack of CDs that I've just kind of accumulated. A bunch of them are like my parents' old CDs or like my godmother's old CDs, and I was kind of just like going through finding what I like. But my computer doesn't have a disk drive, so I can't I can't even put them onto iTunes anymore. So I had to get a big receiver, and like now I need to get speakers because like I need speakers to plug into the receiver. So it's like it's stuff like that.
Obsolete
like,
media.
Yeah, where it's obsolete, but the quality of CDs. It's up there with like the digital streaming.
Still, yeah, definitely.
Even better.
Exactly.
Yeah, without the compression.
Yeah. I listen to old records, and I have
LPs.
Yeah.
Vinyl LPs, yeah.
Like old school stereo system, like Craigslist.
Well, that's a kind of a niche-y thing, like Fenris.
Well, but like records sales are through the roof. CDs are dying out.
It's true, isn't it? Yeah. Like I can see the university bookstore over at State. They're selling old albums I used to buy. They're selling for like $30. $30.
It's a burgeoning market, but like, and then it comes with digital downloads of the same record, so you can throw it on your phone or whatever. And
that makes sense.
I stream also, but like the sound quality is certainly better. And I don't know about like local television. I don't have cable or rabbit ears, so I have an Apple TV box, and we stream things.
Yeah.
And it's not always great, depending on who's like HBO streams in really poor quality.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, really. Like
they charge
if you
money
stream HBO through Amazon Prime, it's better quality.
Interesting.
Like HBO limits it for some reason.
Wow.
But
wild. Okay.
I don't know.
How many people have seen a TV show on a TV in the last week? Jacob, Julian, Fenris? Yeah, in the last week. I'm not saying your whole life. So CJ, okay. CJ, Jacob, and Fenris. So that's it?
Wait.
Just like turn on ABC, NBC, CW.
If I have cable or not? I don't
Or even without cable, because.
Okay, then yes, I have.
Okay.
I watched Riverdale last night.
So that's 4 people. Way to go. Interesting stuff. Okay. Awesome. Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's always news to me because, again, like a few years back, everyone would have been like, not anymore. So things are in enormous transitions. CJ?
I mean, like, the only reason I'm like forced to watch TV is because I have everything streaming. So it's like I don't have like cable. I just have like the basic like channel 2, 3, 4, like that stuff. So I just watch the news. So it's like everything I have like Netflix or Hulu or like I can get on my laptop. So
I got it. So you don't have cable. You have a whole bunch of streaming services through the internet, and you have terrestrial TV if you ever.
Yeah.
If you want to, so you get channel 2 and 5, whatever. Yeah. So you're a cord cutter. That's what they call in the business, or meaning that the cable, like 70% of the country used to have cable in order to see regular television shows, and that's really falling off.
That's why Comcast is getting into the streaming game because they're losing customers like us.
They're absolutely in transition. And the other thing is they've become more profitable as IP, as internet providers.
Right.
So that's a huge part of their business, and so they want to continue to develop that and give you more reasons to need higher speeds and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So with their service, they're going to give it to you for free. So but it'll be interesting to see if it actually works out. Jacob?
So, when I watch TV, I watch like stuff to educate myself. Like I watch like a lot of sports stuff, so I know like every team's name and like their players and their stats and stuff like that. And I keep up with that, and I write it down and stuff like that when they talk about it.
Okay.
And then people can quiz me on it.
And does that give you? Do you prefer to gather that kind of information that way than, I don't know, through an app? Like, yes? How come?
Some apps can lie.
Can lie? Really? Oh,
Like,
okay.
Basically, like Wikipedia or something can say like somebody has this.
Okay, but couldn't TV be equally inaccurate, or do you think you trust it more?
Well, I trust it more because they're former players. Like, for example, like Tony Romo, he predicted every single play for the Patriots when they.
Oh wow. Okay.
And it kind of interested me.
So you rely on the experts that you can find in traditional media. That's reminding me about what Kira was talking about last class when we were, talking about the importance of old media having personalities, or making it exclusive somehow. So that's an interesting point. We used to go on field trips to the Bleacher Report, which is owned by Turner Broadcasting. So their office may still be on Grant Street, I think, somewhere downtown we used to go. And there was a room about the size of this room with monitors all around it. And they had these apps. Basically, you could get an app for every sports team that you were interested in.
Oh, wow.
And the people working there was like maybe between 15, 20 young people, just just monitoring the screens all the time, looking for any information and
Wow.
shooting that out in the app. So
That's cool.
for a sports fanatic, I think, But that also shows how, if it was misreported on Fox Sports, then it may be misreported through the app too. You know what I mean? It's a human chain. That was interesting. We should try to go back there. But Turner still owns it, but they shut down all of the original reporting that was going out of there a couple of years ago. Yeah, which is really too bad. One of our industry advisors was the guy who was running the internship program there. So
Oh, wow.
he works at the Chronicle now. Tough times. Okay, well, but I do want to segue as you were talking about. I'm being very. Taking advantage here of this to get to this last point, because you were saying that you like to learn stuff when you watch TV. And one of the ways that people who think about electronic media have thought about electronic media is in terms of what the audience gets out of it. So they have what's called a typology, which simply means that they got these three broad categories in which they try to, address what people get out of media. So one is cognitive, which relates to what you're talking about. By cognitive, they mean when you use media to learn stuff. And then there's also emotional effects, where you're using media in order to change your mood in some way. And then behavioral effects, which is where media actually gets you to do stuff. So those are three concepts there, and Jacob already gave us a great example of, learning a lot about, sports stats and the history and the the way the game is going from watching broadcast TV. Can people think of like emotional uses, like in your life? You're describing a lot about the phone, but also about old media, but media that you use for emotional reasons. Kira?
I have a lot of internet friends, and I use social media to post for them. I talk about how I feel. I actually live with my internet friends.
Cool.
So I feel like media, social media at least, has definitely affected me emotionally on many levels, because I made most of my friends from the internet.
Amazing. Okay, cool. So it has both the ability for you to express yourself emotionally, and also, I guess, the constant keeping in touch as well, which is an emotional thing, right? We need to feel our support. We need to feel our community around us. So that's really cool. Other media that you might use or expect emotional effects from it? Jacob?
Well,
And then Ruth.
the commercial of the ASPCA when they put the dogs on, that's pretty emotional.
Okay, there's emotional appeals. Yeah, television can have certain emotional effects for sure. And in fact, it was kind of surprising to hear you talking about it in a cognitive way. Because I don't know, the cliche about TV is that it's very emotional. So. Ruth, what did you think?
I said, if you watch a video, or on Instagram, or on YouTube, or even a film or something, and maybe motivates you, or makes you feel down, or makes you feel up.
Uh-huh.
Just using that stuff, just how people use music to change how they feel.
Okay.
Or they use music based on how they're feeling, or listen to it as well.
Okay.
Did you hear that?
Good point. I heard most of it, definitely. And it was, I think you were talking about, again, the emotional impacts of video, but online video especially, yeah. How about audio? Rick?
I listen to podcasts sometimes, like comedy podcasts when I like want to laugh, and if I want to go to sleep, I'll listen to NPR, like Fresh Air or something.
Yeah, it'll put us to sleep. Me too. Me too. It's a good way to go to sleep. And CJ, you had your hand
I
up?
was about to say the same thing.
Okay.
Like I listen to podcasts, so like, yeah, or podcasts and music to put me in like the same mood. Or just like, yeah.
And how about music? How about music? Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's I think a great emotion modulator. You want to get up, let's put some music you love that's lively, and you want to wallow and then wallow in that kind of music for sure. Yeah. So yeah, and how about behavioral effects? I mean, I think it extends on. We've been talking about the emotional impact of advertising or something. I think there's a hope, at least on the part of advertisers, that they can affect your behavior, by sending you messages, buy this product, this is really amazing. Will you actually, the behavior tends to be consuming, but also there's public service announcements. The media still is used to try to educate the population, don't smoke, don't drink and drive, those types of things. And they'll often combine an emotional appeal. Okay, well, I think that makes meaningful these concepts. Cognitive is the one that is related to learning. So that's just the idea that you're learning, you're getting information, you're nourishing the thinking part of your spirit through media. And again, we talked about the kind of fears that the population has around any medium. And you'll see, when television appears, there's a lot of conservative people who think that it's an emotional type of communication medium. It's only good for entertainment. It's frivolous. To be serious, you had to read books and stuff like that. And, there's some kinds of prejudices that still come up like that. And also, I mean. Well, later on we'll have a discussion towards the end of the semester, but the idea that the cognitive only exists within certain media. Again, that's why Jacob's example was kind of interesting. Sports is often stereotyped as very emotional and not very intellectual. And what Jacob is saying is, no, I actually watch TV and I am doing kind of a cognitive thing with it. I'm learning a lot about the game, which is not what people would usually expect. I think the stereotype is, leaping out of your seat when somebody scores or something like that. You also have a cognitive connection too. Okay, so cool. Let us just divert ourselves with a little video here, which is actually really well made, but it's short, quick, and see if it spurs any thoughts on your behalf. So this is trying to represent in video the big transition that we've been talking about.
So I'm going to go a little academic on you, forgive me. We're in a university. Journalists, and tech folks don't look back very much. They look either at the present or ahead. So I'm going to break that cycle and go back a little in time to talk about the history of media. I think using a software framework of version numbers that maybe 0.1 is the cave-dwelling paintings, long time ago, 15,000 years. Maybe the papyrus, the printing on something like paper, creating something like, later on, books, is a sort of 0.5, I don't know, close enough for me. The next big change is actual books. And in this case, this is the scribes, the priests who are creating books by copying the Bible into new books. Pretty familiar form, though it was being done by hand. That changed pretty dramatically right after that with Gutenberg and his printing press. Also the Bible, that's Mr. Gutenberg there in the center of that picture. And that was liberating the Word of God from the control of the priests fairly significant event. Maybe the political pamphlets of the revolutionary times are at kind of 1.1. Another persuasive use of printing to convince people of something. It was politics this time causing revolutions. The telegraph wasn't media precisely, but an amazing tool, and it was media in the sense that it was something transmitted over a long distance really fast, no longer the speed of a horse, but of the speed of light. The newspaper, magazine, book of the late 19th, early 20th century, kind of the pinnacle, I think, of the print era. I don't mean to compare the Times with the Titanic, forgive me, John. But this is a major thing, but not as major as broadcast. The radio comes along, right? And all of a sudden, one-to-many at the speed of light over long distances with people scaring us like Orson Welles or calming us like FDR. The TV in the mid-20th century. Clearly another major change, not as big as what we've had, but the events like the debates and then the moon landing watched by a majority of people on the planet who were in places where they could. This is sort of the pinnacle of broadcast, although I kind of hate to say that. The biggest difference, of course, in this is that instead of 3 channels, there's 300 to 500 on your average set. And now here we are. Packet switching, ones and zeros, speed of light, one to many, many to many, dramatic like the book and like the broadcast era in change. But remember the legacy model of what we did in the 20th century, which was the production of media, and then it was a manufacturing process. You manufactured it, then you put it in trucks or sent it out over the airwaves. Not what we do now. Now we create stuff, we put it online, and other people come and get it. That's totally different than what we did in the past. We should really understand how different that is, because it helps us create a whole new ecosystem. And this is the beginnings of a news ecosystem. This is not even close to where we are, but it's a start, and that's why I'm so excited, because it's going to be diverse in ways it was never diverse in the past. The possibilities when the consumers morph into not just creators, but collaborators with things like Wikipedia and the things we do with these collaborative tools is immense. And we haven't even begun to figure that out, where it's going. But some of the things that are coming, this is one of my favorites. This is adding not just collaboration, but sensor data, human and machine sensors, in this case to look at the radiation around Fukushima. So I'm kind of worried about 4.0, about the taking back of control into a few hands. I don't think this scenario is the most likely one, but it's a possibility and it scares me. I worry this is closer because this is how Hollywood, the cartel, the copyright cartel, and the government, they kind of like the internet to work this way if they could do it. And that scares the crap out of me, and it should scare the crap out of you. And we have a job. We have to reassert in our future history that this is ours. It's not theirs. We're going to innovate at the edge, and we're going to save it, I hope, for ourselves. Thank you.
Riley, what do you make of the history? I mean, I saw some echoes with what we've been talking about before, and also some forceful opinions that we could talk about. Anything in there?
What's the question?
I really just thinking, like, what did you guys think when you saw that? Did it remind you of anything we've been talking about, or did it connect to anything that you care about? I mean, I could ask more specific questions if this is not going anywhere. Chris?
Well, definitely it echoes what we've been talking about, and I agree with pretty much everything he said. I think, he said TV was kind of a big change, but not that big compared to what's come before. But I think in terms of marketing, it was a monumental change. So if you look at the debate between JFK and Nixon, and JFK knew that it was going to be in color or in black and white, and Nixon didn't really think about that. JFK wore a specific type of suit and he knew would look better on national black and white television.
Okay.
And he won,
Yeah.
he won the debate. But so I mean, it just revolutionized marketing in a way that had never been done before.
Okay.
But-
And how about the fear that he expressed at the end of a kind of a corporatization of media that
Yeah.
he feels there's something to be lost there. You guys feel that way? Do you feel it's Chris, you're nodding, other folks? Kira?
I feel like he's like right and wrong about it.
I love those.
I feel like they're not gonna do what he's saying. I think they're gonna go more towards like a mass production route of just like trying to put one like homogenous thing in everyone's homes that will help them with everything. Kind of like AI or like robots or something. I feel like
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that's reminding me of when he talked about like real-time sensor data connecting to this type of
Like,
thing.
I feel like they're just gonna make people have one specific thing and try to put that in everyone's homes as a way of, like a new way of life to live with this thing in our lives now. I feel like that could be maybe true.
I think that's very credible. I don't know, what it'll look like, but if you look at Alexa, it might be suggesting things that are very soon on their way. Fenris, you had a hand up?
Actually, I was just about to get into that point.
Go ahead.
Google Home, Alexa, all of those are instant streaming services that help you immediately.
Yeah, yeah. And we're worried that they're monitoring us, but in a way,
they are in some way. They are collecting data.
yeah, and we may benefit from it and eventually not worry anymore about it, but just accept it like we, use our phone to Google something. Ruth?
I'll have to question. Well, kind of like, how like you can like lock your doors or like whatever on your phone. Like there's like home apps now. and
Smart
stuff.
homes.
Yeah, like smart homes. And then like there's like also a movie I watched a really long time ago. That was like a smart home basically. Like the home was like talking to you and like with her, like with her, it kind of connects. 'Cause, like,
Yeah, Kira? Ruth, yeah, yeah, yeah.
So like maybe like in the future there'll be like a smart home that literally talks to you, does everything for you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like having this discussion when I was your age, it would have been like FaceTime, man, that's science fiction, right? But in the future, we'll have phones that, and now we do. We have phones that you can see people on and stuff, yeah. So I guess we don't know exactly the shape it'll take, but we have ideas about where it's going. Yeah, Jacob?
Well, I learned in high school that phones nowadays are getting tracked by like computers. So if anybody does like a terrorist thing or anything like that, they'll send red flags to the computer and it'll send like the location and everything to the FBI or whatever. Because like, and where I lived in Havasu, there was a guy that was threatening the president, and the Secret Service came right away to his house and arrested him. And I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, it's all part of a bunch of concerns about surveillance that are growing. Yeah, and we may, like I said, tolerate some of it if it gives us enough back, or the government may engineer it in as well. Michael?
Yeah, I remember I saw this one video on YouTube. It was like so have you ever noticed, or I don't know, well, anyone in this room, have you ever noticed how you'll be on Instagram or something and the stuff you've never typed before is like an ad? Like say you were, I don't know, talking about some type of food or something, and then you get an ad for Cheesecake Factory.
Yeah.
There was a video on YouTube of this like married couple who don't have kids or don't have like nieces or nephews or anything. They went on Facebook and they left it open for a day on their phones, and they had like hypothetical conversations about getting baby food. So, but they'd be like, oh, like the baby's hungry, the baby needs food. Like, where should we eat? Oh, the baby, blah, blah, this. And then within a day, they started getting baby food advertisements on their Facebook page.
Wow. Okay. So the implication is that somehow they were being monitored and
In some way.
yeah. I don't know about that. I like literally I just don't know about it. I don't know anything about it.
Well, no, they're
Rick.
definitely doing that. Target got in trouble for predicting that a girl was pregnant before the parents or she even knew.
Wow.
Because of her buying habits. They started sending like coupons, and the dad was like, "What are you doing? My daughter's not pregnant." But it turns out that she was pregnant based on her habits there. So they're definitely tracking.
Okay. Yeah.
Gmail too. I mean, like you get ads at the top that are relevant to like your emails.
Right.
Yeah.
or to conversations in your emails that
Yeah, yeah. So these I'm aware of, and you know, but the audio monitoring, you know, I don't know what's going on with that. But another thing, just on the Alexa note, that I find interesting is that you know, what do they call it? Alexa has skills, right? Alexa doesn't have apps. So to me, it's a big difference. Like if I want to put a new function into my phone, I'm assuming that I have to go and get an app in order to do it. Now, I have a lot of installed apps, so maybe through updates and stuff like that. And you know, definitely there are ways that when the app is in your phone, it could be updated with new privacy or whatever. So yes, you got to keep an eye on that. But the difference to me with Alexa is that I don't know what the thing can do. It's sitting in my room, you know, it's sitting there. It can do, you know, you start asking it for stuff and it's like, oh, it can do that. Oh, it can do that. Maybe next week they'll design a whole other bunch of skills and just push that into, you know, the system. And so you start to get a feeling like, well, you'll never know the limits of Alexa, and it's constantly growing and building. And to me, that's a little, it's different. That's all. It's like, because I don't have a sense of the limitations of Alexa, you know, and like from one week to another, it might be able to do a lot that I didn't know, or maybe I just have to learn how to interact with it to get what I want. And to me, that's a whole different thing than downloading an app which tells me what it does and everything like that. This is much more like an artificial intelligence to me, in a sense that I'm getting to know something that can do something for me, and I don't really know what limits it has, and it's changing all the time. Rick?
Yeah, maybe because I'm like into tech and like I really like read about it all the time, but I feel like as a company, they're not going to do something that's going to like make them go under, right? Especially they're a public traded company, so that's
They don't want to offend
that's going to
people
keep
by
in check.
Yeah.
And they're not going to start doing things that are going to make them lose customers. So I think there is a check there for that. They're not just going to go all like Wild West and start, you know, monitoring you and, you know, like sending your stuff to the FBI or whatever. Because if they get caught, then that's the end of them.
Right.
So
do you guys think that we're wising up because of Facebook's problems?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And Facebook's not the only one. They're just the ones that were first to be kind of.
They're so
exposed,
huge,
you know what I
and
mean?
and all
And
the
they're
word,
so big, yeah.
all the bad news is kind of directed at them. Yeah.
Yeah. But now they're changing because they got found out that you
Yep.
know what they're doing. So now they're just trying to stop fake news and like all that. Like,
Right,
monitoring.
and also, but they're continually having to like, oh yeah, we better fess up to the fact that we've been sharing your data with 500 companies and we don't even know what they did with it after we shared it with them. And
This is
we
one
don't
thing
know how
after
much-
another.
Yeah, right, which is a nightmare for any corporation, right?
Yeah.
Because you were saying, well, the fear of offending people or losing market will, keep them in line. In the Facebook example, it's kind of like, yeah, they were afraid, but they still did a lot of stuff, which has cost them a whole lot. So it's very interesting to watch. I'm not on their side. I'm not all that paranoid about what's going on, but it's just really interesting to see all these changes happening. And plus, the government trails far behind. They seem to be obsessed totally with, whether the president tweets or not, all he cares about is ratings or the equivalent of. And nobody really seems to be in front of the privacy wave or the tech wave. So if we we have the FCC, right, which is we'll see in the history was created in the 1930s to oversee broadcasting. We have the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC, which oversees advertising. And then we have various laws enacted against obscenity and certain things like that. Some of them are state laws, some of them are federal laws, But that largely is the legal infrastructure for all of media. Copyright laws as well, right? Which we know those the music business knows full well that didn't help, And so those are the protections we have. And of course the First Amendment, the government will not come in and censor your speech. Maybe Google will shut down your YouTube account if you say anything too offensive or something like that. They're a private corporation. They can choose whose speech they limit or not. But the government can't create a bunch of laws to censor what goes on. You know, obscenity is a kind of an exception to the First Amendment guarantees of free speech. So, but that's basically it, right? And that's what we're trying to use to, you know, keep all of these different channels positive and productive and useful to us, and not harmful and misleading and inciting violence, or, you know, furthering, you know, the horrible stuff that's in our culture, right? And so we're kind of a long way away from that. We have those protections, but I think they're insufficient right now, and the government can't seem to get along to do much to respond. So it's interesting, you know. So there are debates that we'll look at in the class about, you know, net neutrality and privacy and surveillance, and, you know, some things that are already clearly a problem, but the solutions are not yet forthcoming. Okay, at the end of every Thursday, and I probably, again, you guys are great discussions. I always hate to interrupt those discussions, and I get into myself. But in the last week, we have till 11:25, right?
Yeah.
So we got 10 more minutes to play this thing called Kahoot. And we may not get all the way through it today, or maybe not everyone will want to do it. But Kahoot is basically like projecting up a quiz, and you guys can vote on your phone as to what you think the answers are. And it can be fun if everybody's playing, and sometimes if not everyone wants to play, it can just be a good way of me getting kinds of questions on the material that we covered this week. Get them in front of you before they're on a quiz or on a midterm exam or something. You, and maybe you don't want to do this today or whatever, but if you have the Kahoot app, you just open up the app, and I give you, or projected up here will be a PIN number. When you're in the app, you enter the PIN, and the game begins, and then you can answer. You can basically choose your multiple choice answers. So if you happen to have the app, great. If you don't, you might want to either get it today or in the future.
Well, I'm on the website, and you could do the pin that way.
Can you?
Yeah, next to the
Sweet.
login.
So you don't even need the app.
No.
Okay, great. So you can go through, so it's kahoot.com, right? Now let's see if I can remember my password here. It's been a little while. Yes, indeed, I can. So my Kahoots. So I'll show you, the pin will come up soon. So let me go to, where am I? I have one for each chapter. I gotta find it. There it is. We'll play it. So now it's gonna, pick classic. You can play it a bunch of different ways. So it'll generate a pin very soon, and then it'll ask you to log in with like a nickname. So the pin 833104, and actually usually it has some music or something. I can put pictures here if I ever found the time. Okay, so Mike is in. And I'll give you a minute, but you can still you can log in even as we play. And as I said, I definitely have to give more than 10 minutes at the end of class to this. I'm going to start the game, but you can still log in with the pin that's up there. All right. 9 questions. Are you ready? We are. Okay. Whose model of communication is known as the mathematical model? That was the sender to receiver. Was it Schramm and Osgood, Shannon and Weaver, McLuhan, or just plain old Schramm? This is all just for fun, right? If you can't remember, but maybe you should note down. It's like, oh
You
yeah,
don't get one shot at answer.
he's going to ask a question of this. Yeah.
I think I clicked the right answer, but I wasn't looking at my phone when I did. I was looking at the screen, so I might have hit the wrong one.
I picked the wrong one. I missed
Go for it. Well, we'll know. So 2 people got it wrong. 1 person got it right. It's Shannon and Weaver. So the mathematical model comes from Shannon and Weaver. That's the send and receive model. If you note down if you have any questions, we may still have a chance to answer these. I'm going to definitely leave more time. Which is considered the nation's first mass medium? Is it the telegraph, the newspapers, the internet, or the radio? Is everybody who wants to play this doing okay with it? All right, awesome. Everyone is. So 3 people got newspapers, right? So the second choice, telegraph. The thing about the telegraph, it wasn't a way of taking one message and sending it to a whole bunch of people. It was kind of like sending a letter, but electronically. So it was a one-to-one, point-to-point communication, versus mass medium is one-to-many. So like a TV station that sends its signal out to many people. So that's why newspapers came, like the Chronicle, prints up 1 million copies and distributes it. Convergence happens when different types of media become the same. True or false? All right, 4 people got it right. If you got it wrong, it's probably because I wrote that assertion up in such a kind of a primitive way. Unfortunately, there's a limited number of characters that you can take to make a question in Kahoots. But the idea is that radio and television come together in your telephone, as audio and video, admittedly. But convergence, the idea that separate things now are available together. That's the idea of convergence. Localism doesn't matter to radio stations anymore. So we're thinking of a competitive environment where radio is competing against Apple Music, Spotify, Pandora, even satellite radio, where the signal is the same throughout the country. Would localism be important? Okay, we're getting good response on that. So it is false. Radio stations care a good deal about localism. It's one of the things that they can offer that even satellite radio can't, because satellite radio has one signal for the whole country versus your local radio station can play local bands and stuff. 20, what do you call messages that are received almost instantaneously after transmission? So you're watching a game and you're getting it, with a split-second delay maybe. Okay? Asynchronous, synchronous, non-mediated, immediated. All right, again, good response. 4 people got the right answer. So synchronous communication is happening, again, during a live broadcast. Asynchronous would be when you consume it after the fact. It's not always synced together. So old school broadcasting was very much a synchronous medium because you had to show up at 8 o'clock to see somebody perform, on TV, versus now you can watch them anytime. What is probably the most revolutionary innovation since the printing press? Is it convergence? Is it monetizing the marketplace of ideas? Is it consolidation? Or is it digitization of mediated content? All right. Digitization, as we were talking about in reference to that timeline, is the most important thing since the printing press, according to the textbook, for sure. Digital lets stations offer multiple channels in their frequency. So this is something that I didn't quite get to in my story about what digitization has done to radio. So, answer what you like, but you didn't hear the information on this one. So basically, right now, there is a digital radio system called IBOC, in-band on-channel, here in the USA. And what it means is when you tune into 106.1, you're getting the analog signal. It also has a digital signal on that same channel. So analog and digital can be mixed together. And in addition to that, they can put sub-channels onto the same digital signal. So those of you who are getting their television off the terrestrial airwaves may notice that you go to channel 5 and there's 5 sub 1, 5 sub 2, 5 sub 3 now. Because in digital, on the same channel, you can fit several streams of information. So it's much more efficient. So digital stations offer multiple channels in their frequency. Okay, question 8 of 9. Which kind of an effect is it when we learn something from the mass media? Behavioral, cognitive, emotional, physical? What would it be? really down to our excellent cognitive. So when we learn something, it's a cognitive effect. And finally, which of the following statements is true? This is regarding the protections that the government offer, however limited they might be. Okay, there's also stuff that we haven't talked about. The internet has full First Amendment protection. I'll just answer this one. We didn't get to it. It definitely does. You know, the government is not allowed to throttle communication off the internet with these certain exceptions about obscenity and other, you know, terrorist activity and stuff. The FCC treats subscription media different than broadcast. That is true as well. And finally, this thing is really, that would have caught you out, I guess. The fairness doctrine is an old piece of FCC legislation, which it was that if you had a conservative viewpoint that was aired on a television show, they had to right away have a liberal viewpoint afterwards. Same show. So they would have like a liberal pundit and then a conservative pundit, and they would do their little speeches. And in the 1980s, they stopped enforcing that, and that gave rise to left-wing media and right-wing media on television, for instance, where you got Fox News with their point of view and MSNBC with their point of view, and they're not obliged to have anybody else's point of view on their show. Used to be that the fairness doctrine meant you had to have equal time for each.
So shouldn't that be the answer?
All of them are true.
Oh.
Because the internet does also have First Amendment protection, and the FCC does treat subscription media
says
differently than broadcast.
FCC one is true. That's right.
Yeah, I said all.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I think the fairness doctrine is no longer in place.
It's no longer in place.
Correct. This is true. It's all true. So that is the correct answer. But which one is it showing me? I don't know.
FCC?
Those of you who got 4, okay, well, that's a mistake. It's all true right now. Okay, so let me fix that.